Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Library Art Gallery for the first of our 3 lunchtime lectures for this semester. And I'm very glad to welcome back for the second time Professor Fazlı from the Computer Engineering Department at Bilkent, who will be talking briefly, shortly he'll be talking about things hidden behind the numbers of İnce Memeds. It is rather sad in a coincidental way that Turkey lost Yaşar Kemal, a very famous and popular author, only last week, and it was his text, İnce Memeds, which Professor Can has chosen to analyze and discuss with us today. My colleagues in the library yesterday suggested that by way of respect for the late Mr. Yaşar Kemal, that we might have a minute's silence before we start the main proceedings, because he was a very important figure for Turkey and for literature throughout the world. So we begin about now and 1 minute. Thank you. Most of you will have found on your chair a piece of paper, and if you took the chance to have a look at it, you'll see it's a very short survey. New policy for this and a number of projects in the library is to get some feedback about the activities and the services we provide. So at the end of the talk, obviously because you haven't heard Fazlı Can's talk yet, if you will take a couple of seconds to complete that survey, you can leave them on the chair or you can hand them to the librarians at the door as you leave. If you don't have a pen, there are some library pens going around. They're obviously already distributed. You can collect them as they pass around and do the survey at that point. Okay, please make sure your phones are either switched off or turned to silent mode so we don't interrupt Professor Can's speech. And I shall now give the stage to him. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, David, for the introduction. It's good to be here, and I am happy that you are here. And the preparation I made is kind of informal. I mean, I haven't done any rehearsal, so we will hear what I'm going to say together. You know, it will be like that. It will be like that, and it will be a presentation which includes first some personal anecdotes, then a little bit formal, then again some personal anecdotes, etc. So it will follow that, like that, and we will have a kind of time fly, change in the years, etc. So we will see it together. We will see it together, and so probably this will work, or this will work. Okay. Now, when I think about this style thing, the study that I have done, I always remember this 2001. 2001. The reason is I was here because of my second sabbatical, and I had written a paper with my colleague, John Patton, and we had submitted the paper, and we were waiting for the journal's decision, and we weren't sure about the importance of our study from the viewpoints of literary scholars. And then I went to the Edebiyat bölümü, and I met Süha Oğuzertem, my colleague and my close friend now. And so I remember these names and that event. And the event was, 2001, so that thing happened. So it's a kind of personal thing. So I wanted to share this with you. And actually, the first time I met İnce Memeds, was 1969. I was a high school student. And there was this büyük sinema in Kızılay, and the building is still there, but in a different form. Then I bought the book, İnce Memeds, the first edition, And I bought it from Sergi Kitabevi. There was this Sergi Kitabevi by Erdal Öz. And I also I was flipping the pages of this book and another book, and I found a billet from that cinema, etc. So, this one is remembrance of those times, and this one is the Sergi Kitabevi ambalaj kağıdı used, and I found it in another book. So, it is like that. Now, 1969, then actually I bought the second volume the same year. So I have the dates over there. It was the July. It is the year, Armstrong said that famous thing on the moon. So we were on the moon. So we were listening to that thing from a radio. And actually, there was someone, a speaker was watching the TV in the United States, and he was transferring that thing from the radio. So it was a year like that. And then actually, if you look at İnce Memeds, he has written the book in 1954. 1954, and 1954 it is remembered by its very cold winter. And we always remember that thing from my sisters, for example. They say that we were unable to walk on the streets, so we were always using we were unable to use the sidewalks. It was like that. 1954 was like that. And Yaşar Kemal, in that book, which is the PhD dissertation of Ramazan Çiftlikçi, he says that it was a very cold winter, and they were living in a small apartment with his wife Tilda, and it was a cold apartment, and actually they were using a small stove, and they were getting some heat from their neighbors at the same time. So, and actually, it was published in 1954 in Tefrika form, and from the Cumhuriyet cover page is from the first day, and the İnce Memeds sample is from the last day of the series. And he received some bonus from the prepayment from the newspaper, and it was 1,000 TL, 1,000 Turkish lira. And actually, I was able to calculate the equivalent amount. It makes about 4,000 TL by using our rent for our apartment, So I was able to do that. And he was unsure about the work. Yaşar Kemal was unsure about the work, and he asked that, please don't put my name to İnce Memeds. So it was like that. So for young authors, if you are unsure about your work, then, we have something which makes us, kind of more courageous. And so then in 2001, what happened in 2001? I was here, as I said, for my sabbatical, and we have decided to do İnce Memeds style analysis. Then I mentioned this to Engin Demir. Engin Demir was a PhD student. He was a fresh PhD student at that time. And I mentioned him, I want to do that. Then he came a couple of days later. He said that I scanned everything. I had this Epifine reader. Then, he digitized everything. So because of that, I cannot forget Engin. And now he is an assistant professor at Türk Hava Kurumu University. And then, in 2014, there's Sami Arpa, our student. Now he's a PhD student. I mentioned him. Then he said that I will draw İnce Memeds. So from his point of view, probably İnce Memeds was not that big, but it was the opinion of people about him. Since they didn't see, and there were legends about him, about how big he is, something like that. So it is his view of İnce Memeds. And actually, he was kind enough also to draw the poster for this presentation. I thank him. And so 2014, there was this Yaşar Kemal Symposium, and I made this presentation, İnce Memed'in sayılarında gizlenenler. And actually, after coming here, I mentioned this to David Thornton, then I said, I may present this. So the idea is about 3 months old. It's not a new thing. So there is this thing, and of course, now we have 2015. And, he doesn't eat my words, so we will remember him, obviously, because of his work. And what I talk about is text mining, change of style with time. İnce Memeds versus 20th Turkish century literature, change in Turkish language, and some conclusions, and some, how we can use this text mining for literary scholarship. And in terms of text mining, what we can say is it is a way of finding the patterns in text, whether they are used consciously or unconsciously. And why would you do that? You know, we may want to identify the author of a work, and we may want to determine the genre. You know, it may be for children, or it may be for, you know, it may be political, so we may want to determine genre, or we may want to determine the time of the work, or the gender of the author, or the sentiment of the work. So we can use them for these purposes and for some additional purposes too, actually. Now, we have this text mining, but obviously we can use similar thing for music mining. In what sense? For example, Vivaldi, you know, I was here at a concert, and Metin it was an educational concert. I didn't know that we have that kind of concerts here. And he mentioned about Vivaldi, and he said that the people of his time, they said that he composed the same concerto for 500 times. You know, they were so similar to each other. So we may want to analyze that, whether it is true or not. But when I hear Vivaldi, I can sense that, you know, this one is Vivaldi, or I can do that thing for Mozart too, or Haydn too. So, and how about Zeki Müren and Şükrü Tüner? I like Zeki Müren very much, his voice. And you know, Şükrü Tünar's son said that it was a couple of years ago, about 5 years ago, all of the compositions made by Zeki Müren were actually made by my father. You know, he said that. I found all of the compositions, the drafts, etc. So, you know, this may be something we may want to analyze. I mean, it won't be a proof, but, you know, it can be done. And we have some indications about that at the same time, since Şükrü Tüner died in the 1960s, early 1960s, and at that time, Zeki Müren was at the age of 31 or 32. Then he had a long life after that. He was a young man, so he could have done many new compositions, but he hasn't done anything after that, so it's a hint about that. And now, how about this one? A literary hoax. There was this book by Nurtenay, and it was Gizli Kalmış bir İstanbul Masalı, an Istanbul fairy tale that remained secret. And it was published in 1991, and it has received this Haldun Taner Hikaye Armağanı. And then Süha Oğuz Ertem claimed that in 2003, he claimed that this work is actually written by Cem Behar. Cem Behar is a musicologue and at the same time an economist from Bosphorus University. And he wrote an article about that in this kitaplık. And there was no sound coming from Cem Behar. So we have this claim. So, you know, then after that, what happened? I came to Bilkent University in 2005, and we said that, how about if we try to see whether this claim is true or not? So what we have done was, you know, compare the work of Nurtenay, I mean that specific work, with the works of Cem Behar. First, we have done analysis of other authors too with my students. You know, the names are my students. There's this, you know, Dedeoğlu, Metin Koç, Metin Tekkalmaz, and so Oğuz Ertem, of course, you know, my colleague. Then, you know, we were able to see that Cem Behar is very similar to Cem Behar himself. In what way? He was publishing columns in Zaman newspaper, and at the same time there was this Aşk olmayınca meşk olmaz. So when you compare Zaman and Aşk olmayınca meşk olmaz, they were very similar to each other. But, you know, when we have done Nurtenay and Cem Behar comparison, which is at the bottom, and as you see the bars are quite low, it didn't work like that. And we were hoping to publish a paper. And actually, you know, we said, okay, we didn't see that, so let's put this thing aside. So there was this thing. Now, what happened after that? Now, in 2007, Ali Toman came around, and he said that actually I wrote the work. He had this, yes. So you know, in the same journal. So he wrote the work. So you know, actually we were doing something right, but we didn't know. You know, since, you know, we were. So it wasn't written by Cem Behar. So there's this thing. Now. then the question is it always successful? I mean, we are doing text mining, and usually we look at the successful results. How about this one? Romain Gary. Romain Gary is a French author. Actually, he was born in Polish, Russia, something like that. Then a Jewish person. Then they immigrated to France. Then he knew several languages like Polish, Russian, German, Yiddish. He learned English at the age of 30. Then he has written works in English, and they were quite good. Then, of course, he wrote in French. Then he received the work of this Goncourt Award. And it is given to a person only once. I mean, if you take the award once, then you cannot take it one more time. And there was this guy, Emil Acar. Then he received the Goncourt Award with this work, Onca Yoksulluk Varken in Turkish, or The Life Before Us. And there was a movie, Madame Rosa. You may have seen the movie. I haven't seen the movie, but I read the book, Turkish version, a month ago. Then, there was this, so the thing is that Romain Gary, in his suicide letter, he wrote that I wrote the work. And the face was provided, I think, by one of his cousins. Now, people did the analysis, actually, when he was alive, since there was a rumor about that. So the work, there's this Emil Acar, but actually the work was written by him. And the comparison showed that there was no resemblance. There was no resemblance between the work of Emil Acar and, actually, again, Romain Gary. So he was able to fake people. I mean, he was able to change his style, writing style. He was able to change his writing style, and probably because of the fact that he was a multiglot. He knew many different languages, so he was good in terms of playing with the words. So sometimes then it is not successful. I mean, we may not be successful when we use text mining. Now, how do they work? Now, actually, let me see. Then here in this one, how do they work? What we do here in text mining, is we have this training process. In some way, we teach the style of an author, for example, or style of a period. It doesn't need to be an author. For example, we have done an analysis of Ottoman poems. And Mehmet Kalpak was he was in our team. And in that one, we were analyzing the authors, the poets of hundreds of years ago, in terms of distinguishing them, and at the same time, distinguishing their time period. So then, in the training process, teaching style does not always mean a person. It may be a period of time, or it may mean something else too. Then, after teaching the style, here we have the text in suspect, so we are curious about this. Then, we check its style, whether it is similar to what we have trained. Now, so then an example for this can be this real estate listings. You are a real estate agent, for example. What you would do is, okay, you will train yourself. Or a simple way is looking at the listings. Then you look at listings, and okay, apartments in Maltepe, they go with this rent, or they are sold with this price, etc., etc. Then later on, if you see a new apartment, then by looking at its size, or whether it is able to see the sun or something like that, then you can estimate the price. So it is like that. We do this thing in our life always. We train ourselves. Then when we see an unknown thing, we try to classify that thing to one of the things that we have seen before. So it is a natural human thing. Now, so for doing this, for what kind of methods we have? We have supervised methods. So we teach them, external. We provide external knowledge to them. And for that purpose, we have statistical methods and we have machine learning methods. Or it can be unsupervised. No outside information may be given. It is possible. For example, for the clustering thing, I may give the following example. We were doing this Shakespeare sonneter. So, here we have the original Shakespeare sonnets. We have 154 of them. And here is a translation by Talas Said Halman. Are the translations really follow the sonnets? It is the idea. So we have done that, and it is like that. Of course, you have to show that the similarity is not by chance. And we have done that thing for Bülent Bozkurt, for example. It was again like that. They were similar to the original work, but they were at the same time, they were not similar to each other. It is just like in a family, you have children, they are similar to the parents, but they are not similar to each other or something like that. I can see things like that. But at the same time, there was another translation. And that translation was very similar to Bülent Bozkurt's translation, and actually it was plagiarized. He played with the text a little bit. And actually we saw the same name. I don't know whether he was an actual name, or it was an actual name, or it was a virtual name. He did translations from many different languages, from Russian, from French, etc., etc. So probably, I hear that what people do is they hire high school students and they give them the text and they ask them change it a little bit. So change it a little bit so that it becomes a kind of new translation. And perhaps it was something like that. Now, how to define text? So we take the text, then we divide it into equal parts. So we have these blocks, like 1,000 words, or 5,000 words, like that. Then what we do is we count certain things as styles. And so what are the objective things that we can use for styles? Actually, there are several of them, like there are 1,000 of them, and here some of them. Frequency of function words, or they are what? Words which are used very frequently. So it changes from language to language, but in all languages we have that thing. Or frequency of tokens, frequency of words as they appear in the text. So what we do is token lengths actually. If you look at that example, Mehmet yavaş yavaş kendine geliyor. We have 3 words of length 5. Okay, I will look at the words and count their lengths and count the frequencies of the lengths. We have a word with this length, this many number of times. This word, with this length, with this many number of times. Then, what we have is a vector. Vector words with length 2, length 3, length 4, etc., etc., etc. So we obtain a vector for each block. And we can do this in terms of types. What is types? In the case of types, we just keep the words only once. If a word appears, take the word, put this, insert it into this dictionary, and take the word again. When you insert it to the dictionary again, if you already have the word, you are not going to insert it one more time. A word can appear only once. So that one is type. The other one, without, including the repetitions, it is token. So how about if we count the lengths of the types? So we have that thing. We have quite a few actually. How about the lengths of the sentences? We have that thing. And we may look at the types of the words, nouns, adjectives, pronouns, things like that. Here we have this block, and in this block we have 1,000 words. And among these 1,000 words, how many nouns we have? How many pronouns we have? How many adjectives we have? So for this block, we have a count like that, we have a vector like that. For the other block, we have another one. So it is like that. Or, count the syllabus heceler. So there are actually about 1,000 of them. We use some of them, not all. So here we have, so in text mining, we teach the style by using these vectors, so objective descriptions. Then what we do is, we enter the unknown data and look at how they work, or how they are different from each other. Are they of this type or that type, etc. So this picture will be clear in a few moments. And change of style with time. How did it happen? This happened towards the end of the 20th century from my personal historical point of view. I like Çetin Altan's columns. He was writing this Şeytanın Gör dediği, and at that time he was writing in Sabah gazetesi. And he was mentioning about how many words are used by Victor Hugo. Then how many words we use in our daily life in Turkey. There was that thing. Then, then at the same time, I read an article, it was about butterflies. you catch a butterfly, then if you catch another butterfly, if you go to a field, you catch another butterfly, then after a certain thing, then you start to catch the same butterfly. You know, you don't catch a new butterfly. So how many different words? You know, it is that kind of idea. So we were considering doing that thing. Then in some way, I don't know how, but it has changed to looking at the style change with time. Style change with time, and so we have Çetin Altan's columns from 60s and 2000, so old and new. And for Yaşar Kemal, we have this Bin Boğalar Efsanesi, and the other one, the new one, is Fırat Suyu Kan Akıyor Baksana. So we have old and new. It is like that. And here we have, then in our analysis, we were able to separate them from each other. For example, in terms of function words, so here we have the black ones are, I think, old, and the white ones are new. So we can see this separation. So each dot corresponds to a block. Each dot corresponds to a block. It is like that. So when we use function words, we have this kind of separation. When we have token lengths, we have that kind of type lengths, etc. And I put the titles of the papers, etc. at the top. And so we have this distinction, actually. We have this distinction. So here we have, for Fırat Suyu and Bin Boğalar. So we have, old and new. They've been separated. And there's a change from new to old. We can see that. Then after this, we try to classify the work, classify the blocks. So here we have, actually, if we look at the bottommost one, there were 16 blocks. And we were able to identify all old ones as old, so we have 100% success. And if we look at the new ones, we were able to identify 15 of them as new, so the success rate was slightly more than 90%. So we have an observation like that. So then after that, when we look at the average token length, we know what is meant by token. They are actual words. So there is this change, we change from 5.92, an increase. Average type length, again, there's an increase. I mean, the numbers are quite similar to each other, but actually what is important is this, is the difference is statistically significant, and they were like that. I mean, they are not by chance, and the difference is, yes, it is statistically significant. So what we see is, as time changes, the words become longer, and we were trying to explain that. Then we said that perhaps it is because of the maturity of the author. As time passes, an author becomes more mature, so uses kind of more complicated words, so the words become longer. This one is one possibility. And the other possibility was that perhaps we said it is because of this Turkish language reform, which was started at the beginning of the 1930s. So, the choice was, try to use Turkish words. So how do we do that? We take stems and, we add suffixes to them, So we don't have aşık, but we have sevgili or something like that, which comes from sevgi. So, do that thing as much as possible. And actually, this change still continues. I mean, this change still continues. We were talking with David about this change, language change, and he was complaining, or he had an observation. He had an observation rather than complaint. He said that his son, goes to this Turkish school, BAPS. I mean, they have this Turkish language part too. They used to use this, zamir. Now it became adıl, or something like this. So, things are changing even today. So, you may be very, very young, at the age of 9, and still, that thing continues and continues. So we have that kind of observation here. Now, so if we look at İnce Memeds tetralogy now, after this İnce Memeds tetralogy, so published between 1955 and 1987. Actually, he started writing in 1947, etc. So people say that, I mean, literary scholars like Fethi Naci, he says that he has always used the same style. There's this Yüz Yıl Yüz Roman. He has a book like that, Fethi Naci. Then Koner Ertop, he says that he changed his style, Then Oğuz Ertem, he said that actually he changed his style. It was first romantic, The first volume was romantic, then it was realist, then finally it was postmodern. You know, last two of them, final two of them, they were postmodern. So there was this kind of claim about these İnce Memeds tetralogy. And when we look at them altogether, we have about 500,000, you know, words. So these are the words, and these are the different words types, and average token length. And if we look at average type length, of course, as we go down, you know, since we are able to sample longer words, you know, as we go down, more number of words, so types, they become longer. So by looking at that, we cannot say that, you know, types are becoming longer. It is because of sampling more. I mean, first we use short words, then, you know, we use longer words, etc., etc. So, but we have average token length. We can say that. You know, here we have kind of observation about token length increase. Of course, there's the third one. There's a drop, then there's an increase. But I will come back to this. Now, we use 6 different style markers, sentence length, most frequent words, etc. Then, if we look at the correct classification rates, what do we see? Actually, the first one is very successful. I mean, here we have the colors, different colors indicate different style markers. So this one is for volume 1, and this one is volume 2. And, you know, when we try to classify the blocks of volume 1, we had 100% classification correctness rate. I mean, we were able to classify blocks of volume 1 coming from volume 1. You know, it was like that. So as you come down, and here we have this, you know, lower numbers. Actually, probably the reason for kind of little bit lower numbers for this, or lower numbers here, he planned to write the last 2 novels, volume 3 and 4, as 3 different novels, actually. Then he joined them later on. So since he joined them later on, perhaps because of that thing, you know, it shows itself here at the same time. I mean, the style mixes for the third one and the fourth one. Third one style perhaps mixes. There's that thing. And in terms of sentence length changes, what do we see? You know, here we have in this horizontal axis, we have the word length. We have the word length, and here we have the percentage of the sentences. So in the first volume, we have, you know, a large number of sentences with short length. And if we look at volume 4, it is this one. You know, it is the lowest one in terms of shortest sentences. These are sentences. Then, you know, here they are at the above. I mean, he started to use longer sentences in the later versions of the novel. And in terms of sentence lengths, if we do classification using sentence lengths, okay, now İnce Memeds 1 is always İnce Memeds 1. I mean, it doesn't mix with the others. And the second one is here. So it is also, you know, does not mix with the first one, but a little bit mixes with the third one. Then here we have, for the third one and fourth one, you know, they kind of mingle because of perhaps, you know, the reason why the design was, you know, writing them together or separated. Then he joined 3 novels into 2. Perhaps it is because of that. Now, new words. If we look at the words, actually, in general, what happens? New words are longer. As you go from volume to volume, as you go down, you know, they become longer. Of course, here we have to compare apples with apples and oranges with oranges. In what sense? You know, it is done in terms of using blocks with the same length. You know, 5,000. So 5,000 words from the first block, from the first novel, and for example, 5,000 words from the fourth novel, like that. So that, you know, we are comparing not a novel like this and like that, you know, the blocks with the same sizes. So what we see is, you know, there's an increase. For the token length, again, you know, there's this drop, then there's this increase. But in terms of type lengths, we have this steady increase. And actually, you know, statistically, they were becoming longer. I mean, in the newer works, the words were becoming longer. It was like that. And here we have, hopefully it will go down. Okay. Now, how about 20th century Turkish literature? You know, I was curious about the 20th century Turkish literature. I mean, so we have this İnce Memeds, 4 of them. Then how about the century itself? So personally, I picked 40 novels. I mean, some of them I picked since I like the novel. For example, Tutamayanlar was like that. And İnce Memed was in our hands anyway. And there were one of them, İnce Memed was with us. And I was able to find Huzur from the web. And then I scanned the rest, 38 of them. I did it, and I spent good amount of time. I remember that, although I also enjoyed it. You know, I spent like 250 hours for the scanning and correcting, you know, using Epifine Reader, etc. It was like that. I went to Milli Kütüphane, for example. There was this was for Kırık Hayatlar. And there was a young person there. He was doing Xeroxing, and he was a part of the Xerox machine. I mean, he was doing like that. So it's very quickly. He was doing very quickly. So then, you know, then in the United States, you know, I asked novels from other libraries, things like that. So in this one, Mehmet Rauf, Eylül is the first one. And, you know, 10 novels from each 25 quarter century, you know, quarter century. So 10, 10, 10, 10. So we have 40. And so Tutamayanlar is there, for example. Or Çalı Kuşu, 3 Istanbul, you know, I like it very much. So it had to be there, and it is there. And Huzur, I still didn't read Huzur, so it is in my list of reading. So it is there. Then Hacı Hanım Vay, it is Atilla İlhan. And the last one is Ahmet Altan's Kılıç Yarası gibi. And, you know, we have Oktay Akbal, Garipler Sokağı, etc. So we have these. And we said, how about if we analyze these 20th century Turkish literature. And here we have, then when we do the analysis, you know, here we have this kind of grouping. So, for example, they indicate the publication year. Numbers indicate the publication year. Here we have 40s, here we have 24 or 20s, 1920, and we have 70s. And Ayaşlı ve Kiracıları, Memduh Şevket Esendal. I read it about 15 years ago. It was published in 1934, but it had a very new language. I mean, you know, it was just written. When you read it, you would get the impression that it is written just that day. You know, it was like that. So I can explain why, you know, this thing is very close to the 70s. But at the same time, we have Sessizdev, it is there, Orhan Pamuk, and we have Eylül. So it is there, separated from the others. So we have this kind of observation, and I will come back to these observations a little bit later. And when we look at the token length, you know, the length of the words in the text. So we have this increase. It is not just, you know, looking at these dots and pass a line. You know, I mean, it is done using more proper statistical methods. So what we see is, you know, as we go from the initial, which is 1900 to 2000, there is an increase in the word lengths. And if we come up with an equation, actually, you know, the statistical package we used gave us an equation like this. You know, as time passes, each year, we were, I mean, the words were becoming this much longer, or within 1 year, 100 years, for example, the words become like about 1.3 letters longer. So there was this observation, and we have something similar for type lengths. They also have become longer. I mean, type lengths follow the token lengths. Then, as time passes, they become longer. And so after this, what do we have? Okay, we have this, but how about some more analysis? I mean, you know, you cannot stop. How about some more analysis? So this was language change quantification using time-separated parallel translations. What does parallel translations mean? So you have a work of, for example, Shakespeare, Hamlet, translated in, let's say, 1944. Then it is translated again in 1999. Or, you know, Dostoevsky, 2 works. One of them is Beyaz Geceler. Then the other one was Uysal Kız. Then, you know, 2 works, translation that year and that year. And that one is Alphonse Daudet, Değirmeninden Mektuplar, Letters from My Windmill. So 1944, about 60 years difference. And we have this Montaigne essays. So 2 different separations. 2 different separations. Then, actually, I have the list of works here. Anyway, then what do we see here? What do we see here? Let's look at this thing. As we go from, I mean, the blue ones, blue and black, they are pairs. So old, new. Old of a work by Dostoevsky, and its new version. Or if you look at this one, Comedy of Errors, its old version, 1943, and its new version, 1999. So these are for stem lengths, roots. So these are for the roots. So what we observe is, you know, the roots of the words are becoming smaller. You know, it is like that. So the observation was again statistically significant. I mean, it is not by chance. So we have they become smaller as we go from the old one to new one. So perhaps it is, you know, we are using now Turkish words with Turkish roots. So it is a reflection of that. It is a reflection of that thing. Now here we have, when we look at the suffixes, how about this? When we look at the suffixes, we have the following. You know, shorter, longer, shorter, longer, shorter, longer, shorter, longer, shorter, longer, shorter, longer. So as time passes from one for the same work, you know, old translation, new translation, old, new translation, old translation, new translation, we have suffixes. We have longer suffixes. We have longer suffixes, kind of, you know, because of the fact that we are using Turkish stamps and adding suffixes to generate new meanings, And so here we can say the following. If we compare old versus new, then words become longer with time. Stems, they become shorter. Suffixes, they become longer. Meanings per stem is more. We have longer suffixes, so meanings per stem is more. And there's also the following, although I didn't show in a plot there. There is this vocabulary richness. I mean, do we use more number of words or less number of words? It was in terms of stems. And actually, it was lower. In the new works, it is lower. We use lesser number of variety. And so in the new works, and probably again it is because of this, you know, purification thing, Turkish purification thing. And we have this observation. Then after this, I have this picture. Abdullah Şinasi Hisar, and he's one of my favorite authors. He always remembers old time. You know, he's that kind of person. Perhaps I also remember old time, so I am close to him because of that reason, maybe. And you know, you can see the picture. This picture is by Ara Güler. You know, this one picture is by Ara Güler, and you can see him. You know, I mean, the pictures around, you know, the old things, etc. And this fine babies. Actually, I did the scan. I remember this. I did the scan in 2003. I had a summer office here at Bilkent University, and I borrowed the scanner from Engin, and I was scanning, and I was using a fine reader, and I was having good times, and I was enjoying that thing. You know, I was correcting and reading at the same time. And at the beginning of the novel, there's this thing. It is published by Yaşar Nabinayır. It is by Varlık. Now they publish it. His work is published by Yapı Kredi Bankası, and this one is the book that I borrowed from our library. So you know, we have many good books in the library. They are old books, and they are like doing like that. So they are, yeah. I mean, it is like that. And actually, for example, I found a book by Kerim Erim. You know, he's the first mathematician in Turkey with a PhD. I borrowed his book from, and I shared that experience with Savaş Hoca. You know, so Kerim Erim, it was with his signature. You know, he signed the book for his friend, and there was this. It was this. My çalışma refikim, for my çalışma refikim, Kerim, the signature was Kerim, and the signature year was 1941 or something like that. Probably, you know, if you sell that book to a person who is after that thing, he would pay thousands. So it is like that. Hey, you know, I was thinking that I would go till 50. Actually, it ends at 1940, you know. Okay. 1240. Yes, yes. Yeah. So we have this thing. I mean, you know, I forget things. So Yaşar Nabi says that, you know, new generations are unable to get the taste of authors who died just yesterday, you know, because of this change. So this one is from the forward of the work. And here we have, so conclusion, in terms of conclusion, what do we have? Text mining works well as expected. Turkish words, they become significantly longer than literary works. It's a social, they are a social picture, you know, they are a social. You are Yaşar Kemal and you cannot isolate yourself from the society. Society is using longer words, you would use longer words. My students, they say 12,5. And I used to say yarım, saat yarım, you know. So in my time, if you say 12,5, you will be regarded as an illiterate person, you know. Now it is a general thing. It's a general thing now. So perhaps because of that, I also use 12,5 when I speak to my students. Since if I say yarım, they won't understand. So Yaşar Kemal was a part of the society, and his works or his words were becoming longer. You know, they were becoming longer. And it's a social picture, you know, how we think. So it is how we think, we show how we think in our words. So the novels are like that. And objective style studies can be used to support, you know, to support claims. For example, Suha Özertem said that, you know, there's this change, and the observations support that. Or they can be used to oppose. I mean, we were trying to support the idea of Suha Özertem in terms of, you know, it was written by what? This author, but it wasn't like that. So actually, we could have used it to discredit his claim. You know, we missed that. Then here we have other thing. We have so we can there's this thing and so here we have why Sessizler is so separated from each other, or why Eylül is separated from each other. So by looking at such observations, you know, we may try to come up with some new theses. Other questions. İnce Memeds sentiment analysis, it has always the same flow. You know, this İnce Memeds, so now he becomes depressed, then, you know, he kills the baddies, then, you know, he goes to the mountain, so there's this fire in the mountain. So how about analyzing the text in terms of its sentiment? Or text-to-audio sentiment reflection, is it possible? I mean, imagine that someone is reading for you for İnce Memeds and, you know, able to reflect what is there. I'm with a voice which reflects the sentiment. Or Ali Toman, you know, he claimed that he tried to use a different style in all of the works. Was he able to achieve that? You know, was he able to use different style in all of his works? There's that thing. And Kara Kitap, for example, I love Kara Kitap, and there's this Galip writes for Celal. So at the end, does Galip become Celal, you know, in his writing? So it is another thing that we can analyze. Why would you do that? It is just for the heck of it. I mean, it is just for the fun of it. So it is for that. And this one, success with style. Is it possible to predict commercial success of Turkish literary works? There are works like that. They have done it using this Gutenberg data, you know, the number of clicks they receive and the style, and they were able to have like 84% success rate. So if we can do something like this, so we can give this to the editor of Yapı Kredi Bankası, for example, so he can look at that, then, you know, okay, this has good possibility for the future. How about if we push this more? So it is another possible use for this text mining. And of course, thank you very much.
Well, that talk was certainly not just for the heck of it. That was brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
I really enjoyed that. I'm bursting with questions, but as I said, we are technically over time. So any of you who have to get to a class, please feel free to depart, but I'm sure we can have one or two questions that Professor Jan can answer for those who wish to stay, or you can chat it in afterwards.
Okay.
Does anyone have a question they wish to broadcast?
Does it have to be English or?
You can ask in Turkish if you want.
Özellikle bu sintaksla ilgili yaptığınız işleriniz çok faydalı olabilir. Teşekkürler.
Teşekkür ederim.
Aslında semantikle ilgili bir iki şey var. Bunlardan bir tanesi sentiment.
Evet.
Size şöyle çok spesifik bir soru sorayım.
Tabii, lütfen.
Bir metindeki bir nesnenin, öznenin algısıyla ilgili bir analiz yapacak olsaydınız, ben internette bazı araştırmalar yaptım,
Evet.
İngilizce içerisinde. Sentiment analiz için bazı yöntemler var ama doğrudan sayıyorlar sıfatların
Doğru.
negatif, pozitif
Evet.
aspektiyle. Ama bazen olumsuzlayıp bunu yapıyor. Yani mesela Ahmet akıllı değildir diyebiliyor adam. Aslında negatif bir semantik varken
Evet.
pozitif bir semantik varmış gibi orada çıkarsın yapıyor. Buna çözüm bulmuş. Yani siz böyle bir proje yürütseydiniz ne yapardınız?
Okay, so let me answer in English, although it will be kind of strange, but we are in Bilkent, so it is kind of natural. We try to do something like that actually for each Istanbul. Each Istanbul, at the beginning, Adnan is a very good person. Everybody is more or less good, but at the end of the novel, everybody becomes bad, except Süheyla maybe, you know. Then in that one, we did what? We did some hand tagging, you know. A word like this, it's a positive feeling, or it's a, you know, like a good feeling, it represents that thing, then we were able to kind of get the flow, the change in the novel. But it's a difficult thing. So your question was, how would you do that? So we did it by tagging. It was very straightforward. It was simple tagging by people. You know, it was like that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever consider analyzing multiple texts, speeches, or news reports, for example, to understand, for example, there's this event data studies, political science studies, have you heard about them? They use this software to understand who did to whom, when, and what. Kind of coding process, they're automated coding, kind of content analysis. Do you think that such a thing can be possible for Turkish texts as well?
You know, usually studies are done for a specific language, and it is possible to reflect them to another language. The unfortunate thing is that, you know, you cannot use their data, and most of the time they require tagging. I mean, someone must do something, you know, it has to be taught, and, you know, it's a long process, it's an expensive process, so most probably the method will also work for Turkish, for example, but it requires that tagging, and so we have to find people with curiosity, etc. I mean, you know, it must join people coming from two different disciplines. I mean, people doing like computer science type of things, and, you know, people coming from literature, that kind of thing. Most probably, yes. My answer is it's a rough answer, but my answer is yes. So my answer is yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Which software do you use for Turkish text mining?
For Turkish text mining, you know, I work with a statistician, mathematician. John Patton, my colleague, is a mathematician and statistician at the same time. And we used one of the, probably it was SPSS or something like that. You know, I mean, we used certain packages, I mean, certain modules from them, and we indicated all of them in the papers. I mean, we said that we use discriminant analysis, we use this ANOVA or whatever. So we, sure, of course, yeah, sure. Of course, I mean, since they are statistical methods, they always give this famous p-value, whether it is, you know, by chance or not by chance. So they will, I mean, if they say something, it is true. I mean, of course, there's also that thing. There are three types of lies: lies, simple lies, statistics. I mean, you know, there's also that thing. You know, so you can prove anything with statistics by playing with it, but, you know, assume that we are doing this honest analysis, then yes, the answer is yes. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Have you ever considered to make a kind of a mining on visuality, I mean, image?
Visuality of?
I mean, on image, on
good question. We haven't tried that. But, you know, in our department, they did something similar. There's this track conference, and there's this visual images part, you know, what people are doing, that thing, and the words are different, but the concepts are very similar. I mean, when you do this kind of analysis, then, you know, you do it for music, it is very similar. You do it for visual things, it is similar. There are studies, but we haven't done any. Yes, sir.
Have you ever tried the text mining method for legal text or non-fictional work, like scientific papers, etc.?
Good point. Good point. You know, there is this success with style. It was for literary work, and we were thinking about it with my students. You know, with Çağrı and with Hayrettin, we were discussing that thing. Can we use the same thing for the success of scientific papers? I mean, you have these papers, then they have been published. You know, how about we'll look at the style of the paper, then you know, is it going to receive several citations later on? You know, we said, okay, if you try to do that, it is not only the style like this, but we need some other meta features. Meta features are where it has been published. You know, so the writers were they successful before, things like that. I mean, so probably it can be done. It can be done, but by including some more additional data like meta features, and it is important in legal text too. I mean, you know, you are trying to find a text which is a court decision which is similar to your decision, previously published. There can, but we haven't done. There can, but we haven't done a study like that. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
You said that as a style marker, we can use word categories, but did you ever do something like this based on word categories?
Actually, yes, we did. Yes, we did. For the İnce Memeds, we had word categories, and they were again successful. They were again successful. Exactly. So it is part of speech, you know. So is it noun? Exactly. It was like this. I think we used. There was this Kemal Oflezer. You know, he was at Sabancı at that time. We used his program. I mean, in some way, I don't know how he shared his program with us. I mean, he usually doesn't do that. Kemal, you don't do that. Okay, so.
My question is actually, did you observe any morphological analyzer succeed better in first version of the novel or latest version? Do you have any?
Sure. I mean, very quickly we can look at that. Very quickly we can look at that. So it is here in this plot. It is in this one. Word types. They are the blue ones. Blue ones are the word types. So we have this, there is a drop, and we have an increase. So it is like this. So they are successful. They are not as successful as, for example, sentence length, but for example, here we have about 80%, here we have 50%. 50% is not too bad. I mean, you know, if it is by chance, it would be 25% since we have 4 novels. So we have this one, it is about 60%, so it is like that. The blue ones are for their success. Yeah, it's like that.
Okay, for those hardliners who are
Thanks
still here,
thanks
let's
very much.
thank Professor Chan.
Thank you very much. Thank you.